This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Home care clients are being told to prepare to find help as tens of thousands of healthcare support workers prepare to go on strike. The deadline for a deal is looming, and if the two sides can't reach an agreement by next Tuesday, 25,000 workers will picket. As CBC's Mike Arsenault has more on the potential impact.
Jerry Douglas likes to be as independent as possible, but the 83-year-old still needs help in her daily life and relies on home care.
Daily in the morning for my pills and showers twice a week. And at nighttime before I go to bed, they come to give me my pills.
Douglas might not be able to get that help come next week. Home care workers represented by QP and MGEU could go on strike next Tuesday. Douglas is worried about how difficult her life will be without the help.
I'll have to have my showers in the sink rather than the bathtub because I can't get into the bathtub on my own. And my medication, I might forget.
Douglas is one of many who could have their home care services disrupted. Lindsay Brooke is expecting to see a real impact on her clients' lives. She's CEO of Manitoba Possible, a nonprofit that provides programs and services for people with disabilities.
We do know that a lot of caregivers have to step up. People, their loved ones, their family and friends, they have to rely on that. And usually the people accessing home care supports don't want to have to rely on family and friends to meet their basic needs. Shared
Health says services could be disrupted in Winnipeg, Interlake Eastern, Prairie Mountain, and Southern Health Santé Sud. In the event of a strike, essential service agreements will be put in place so that vital services and priority home care will be disrupted as little as possible. MGEU says the starting wage for home care providers isn't competitive anymore.
You're looking for certain types of people who perform this work, and they can go find jobs elsewhere that pay more. So the government has to take a hard look at the labor market as a whole and see what's going on, because if they want to have an improved healthcare system, it's not going to happen when a starting wage is $17.07.
I understand that everybody wants to make more money, or whatever the reasons are behind it, I don't know. But we need to be looked after too.
If 25,000 healthcare workers walk off the job, it'll be the second largest strike in Manitoba's history. Mike Arsenault, CBC News, Winnipeg.
He was sent to prison 50 years ago for the murder of a Winnipeg man. But despite his sentence for decades, Clarence Woodhouse has always maintained his innocence. Now in his 70s, he's been exonerated, and a judge says he was wrongfully convicted. CBC's Cameron McIntosh has his story.
Manitoba's Chief Justice is calling Clarence Woodhouse's 1974 conviction for murder a miscarriage of justice, agreeing he was wrongfully convicted. Woodhouse, now in his 70s, stepped out of court in Winnipeg today with his lawyers and family, holding a black T-shirt saying innocent, along with a written statement from the court.
Shows he's being acquitted.
Woodhouse served 12 years for the stabbing murder of a man in downtown Winnipeg. Innocence Canada brought forward evidence Winnipeg police fabricated a written confession in English that Woodhouse, who spoke mostly Saulteaux at the time, did not understand. This summer, the federal justice minister ordered a new trial, agreeing evidence suggested a miscarriage of justice likely occurred. The Crown concluded the original evidence wouldn't support a retrial. In court, the Chief Justice apologized to Woodhouse and called him innocent.
What did you think of what the judge said to you today?
Yeah, it was all right there. Yeah, pretty good.
And what did you say to him?
I told him that I thank him.
The Crown, Ms. Jules, and we, and indeed the Chief Justice, all acknowledged that there was racism inherent from the investigative stage, the prosecutorial stage, and the judicial stage.
I'm very sorry for what happened to you.
Manitoba's premier met with Woodhouse. An apology was also read in the legislature.
We'll never be able to give back the past that was robbed of this person and the others in a similar situation. But given what we know now, we can take steps to do right.
Two other Indigenous men also convicted in this murder have also been acquitted. They're suing the city of Winnipeg, the province of Manitoba, and the federal government, claiming the police and the Crown colluded against them. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba's official opposition tabled a resolution today calling for out-of-province attorneys to review the decision not to prosecute the alleged accomplice in the drunk driving death of Jordan Reimer. The CBC's Gavin Axelrod joins us in the newsroom this evening. And Gavin, what can you tell us about what exactly happened today?
Well, Jordan Reimer was 24 years old when she was killed by a drunk driver in 2022. Tyler Scott Goodman was sentenced to 7 years in prison in connection with her death. But Reimer's family also wants one of Goodman's friends prosecuted. Court heard he told a woman he would drive that night, but instead gave the keys back to Goodman. Today, the opposition Progressive Conservatives tabled a resolution for that decision to be reviewed. Reimer's family also wants that to happen, but Justice Minister Matt Wiebe says he asked for a second opinion from Manitoba's top Crown attorneys and says they decided the standard was not met to charge the passenger. He also says he can't go out of province without proof that the decision could be overturned. Here's a bit of what Reimer's mother had to say about all this.
They're so confident that their decision is just, then an out-of-province review should validate their decisions.
So also today, former NDP MLA Mark Wasiliu continued to put pressure on the Premier. Gavin, what did he say?
Mark Wasiliu alleges he was assaulted in 2019 by now Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew. He says after a press conference that year, Kinew lunged at him, grabbed his right arm, pulled it down and said, quote, "I'm the leader, you do what I tell you to do." Wasiliu says Kinew reluctantly called him afterward, but didn't apologize or take responsibility. He says this isn't an isolated incident.
This is a pattern of behavior, and what I've noticed with Wab Kinew, that when he's under pressure and he loses control of a situation, he will act out in an aggressive manner.
So what does the Premier have to say in response to this?
Well, not much. Interim PC leader Wayne Owasco brought this up during a debate today. Kinew didn't answer. The Premier was also asked about Wasiliu's allegations during a press conference today. Have a listen to what he said.
Mr. Wasiliu is somebody that I think everyone in the province has seen we have irreconcilable differences with, and that's okay. So I wish him well.
Now, we asked Kinew if his memory of the incident is the same as Wasiliu's. He wouldn't get into that and just repeated he wishes Wasiliu well. Brittany.
All right, thank you. That's CBC's Gavin Axelrod live in the newsroom this evening. A prominent Winnipeg war monument is getting a new home. The statue of a Canadian First World War soldier has stood outside the former Bank of Montreal building at Portage in Maine since 1923. It memorializes BMO employees who died in the conflict. But part of the work of reopening the intersection to foot traffic involves removing the statue. The City of Winnipeg's Property Committee voted to accept it as a gift from the Manitoba Métis Federation, which owns the building. A researcher with the Manitoba Historical Society thinks the move makes sense.
Given that the connection between the statue and the building behind it has been changed, in as much as the bank is no longer there, and it's going to be turned into the Métis Heritage Center, as I understand it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for it to remain where it is.
The city plans to move the statue to the Field of Honor in Brookside Cemetery. Let's bring in weather specialist Riley Lachuk. And Riley, we have been talking about how sweater weather is here. I think I needed to have mitts and even a toque this morning when I took the pup out for a walk, and I had neither.
And you'll want them tomorrow. You really want to make sure you have them tomorrow because we're looking at some pretty chilly temperatures in parts of southern Manitoba overnight tonight, including here in Winnipeg where we have a risk of frost overnight tonight. We'll get into that. Look at the big picture right now. We did start to see some clearing in southern Manitoba, but this area of low pressure stubbornly stuck over Hudson Bay has really been having an impact on our weather, not only spreading even some light snow along the Hudson Bay coast in far northern Manitoba, but those gusty northwesterly winds funneling some of that cooler air right into Manitoba. Also, high pressure dominating the weather south of the border. That's allowing us to clear a little bit, which will allow us to have a little bit more of a sunny sky tomorrow and a lot less windy, but that is short-lived. Temperatures, 10 degrees is what we did in Winnipeg today, 10 in Dauphin as well, 3 in Thompson. These are actually a little below seasonal for this time of the year. We're looking at a low of 0 overnight tonight in Winnipeg. Could get down as low as -4 in Brandon, for example. Mostly sunny, 3 to start first thing in the morning, and we're looking at a mostly sunny 17, Brittany. We'll talk about those cool temperatures a bit later.
Riley, I had my first pumpkin spice latte this morning.
Okay, there you go.
I'm ready for fall. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Well, speaking of fall, an early Halloween treat for Winnipeggers, Boo at the Zoo returns this Friday at the Assiniboine Park Zoo. Many areas in the zoo will be lit up with Halloween-themed decorations. It will also feature a cast of spooky and colorful characters. There'll be food, drinks, live performances, rides, and a few new attractions to enjoy. Boo at the Zoo is also hosting its very first adults-only night on October 31st. The whole event runs until the end of the month and takes place in the evening after the zoo closes. He's popular with the people of the province, but how much progress has been made on his promises? More with Premier Wab Kinew after his first year in office. Stay with us. It's been 1 year since Wab Kinew was elected Manitoba's premier. Despite his government making limited progress on some big issues like healthcare and homelessness, Manitobans appear to be giving the NDP some leeway. The premier sat down with CBC's Ian Fraze.
Manitoba, my dear, sweet Manitoba, look at what we have done here tonight.
That was 1 year ago. Wab Kinew's election as premier was also historic, the first First Nations premier of any Canadian province. A year later, Kinew and his team are celebrating.
We bet that Manitobans were sick and tired of division and wedge politics and nastiness in your legislature. And we instead chose to focus on healthcare, on affordability, on a message of bringing Manitobans together from all walks of life.
Earlier this week, Kinew reflected on his year in office. He stuck to his talking points, like blaming the former progressive conservative government.
It will take us years to fix the damage that Heather Stephenson and Brian Pallister caused in healthcare.
And he held the Tories responsible for a deficit approaching $2 billion.
It's a much narrower path to balance, right?
Yet under the NDP, some big pressing issues are still afflicting Manitoba. ER wait times higher than a year ago. And despite a high deficit, the government surrendered hundreds of millions of dollars by scrapping the gas tax. But Kinew disagrees his government hasn't done enough.
Whether it's healthcare, education, ensuring that the economy moves forward with that cut to the provincial gas tax, being there to stand up for reproductive freedom. We've done a lot this first year.
But he acknowledges there's a lot more to do.
That's why when we made our commitments on healthcare, we said it was a 4-year plan. In some cases, an 8-year plan.
A political expert says Manitobans are cutting the NDP some slack.
So there seems to be some grace period being granted by Manitobans that the government's entitled to more time to demonstrate results.
In fact, a recent poll suggests the government's becoming more popular.
This seems to be beyond what most parties would get even during 12 months.
But Paul Thomas says the biggest challenges are ahead, like ending chronic homelessness and balancing the budget in 3 years.
They're leaving these hard choices deeper into their 4-year term in office. And so that's the last point at which you want to be telling people the unfortunate news that we're going to have to raise taxes because we didn't control our spending in the prior years.
The opposition expects the NDP's shine to wear off.
People are starting to realize that, hey, you know what, their wait times have not gotten any better in healthcare. Their schools aren't getting built.
For now, Kinew is counting on Manitobans' patience. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It's been more than 24 hours since Winnipeg police fatally shot a man inside a Main Street apartment building. But the details of exactly what happened remain scarce. CBC's Zubina Ahmed has more on what we know so far.
6th or 7th floor, they heard. I heard so.
Sue Caribou has been living in the North Point Douglas Manor for 24 years. This is the same apartment building where a male was shot and killed by police on Wednesday afternoon. Caribou calls it a scary day in the building.
I just was looking out my window and a whole bunch of cop cars just drove right into the sidewalk and ran into the building.
Caribou says nobody in the building knows if the male was a resident or a visitor.
When they bought somebody out of the building, they were trying to revive him.
Oh, okay.
Like, they were working on him.
She says it's all very quiet today and everyone stayed in the suites.
We locked up pretty good last night.
Police say it happened just after 12:30 p.m. in the 800 block of Main Street. Officers responded to multiple 911 calls regarding a person armed with edged weapons. Police met the person in the hallway of the apartment building. He was allegedly armed with multiple weapons and banging on tenants' doors. Police say the person was tasered before he was shot by police. Active Acting Winnipeg Police Chief Art Stannard said the male was taken to hospital but later died.
It was an active incident, and we responded that way. Our members are trained to go there and get in there and do what they have to do, and the public was at risk.
Stannard didn't provide many other details when he spoke to media late yesterday afternoon. He said police were still trying to contact the male's next of kin. Manitoba's police watchdog has taken over the investigation. Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Governor General Mary Simon invested 4 companions, 21 officers, and 29 members into the Order of Canada at Rideau Hall today. Canadian actress Sandra Oh was among those who was made an officer of the Order. In addition to her stage and screen work, she was honored for her advocacy for the arts. Former CBC reporter Brian Stewart was also named an officer. He was one of the first journalists to cover 1984's Ethiopia famine. Another CBC journalist, the Fifth Estate's Bob McEwen, was named a member. 2 Manitobans also rounded out the list, including a neurosurgeon and a former film commissioner. Congratulations to all those. And I don't know what the weather was like in Ottawa today, but this morning it was chilly. I'm now having to root through all my winter stuff, and it's not winter, it's fall. But those temperatures, we were talking, one of our producers saying she needs to bring her tomatoes in.
Not helped at all by the wind.
No.
Which is where I'm going to start, because we did see another gusty day here in southern Manitoba today. Looking at some of our peak wind gusts here, peaking at about 50 in Winnipeg as expected, northwest winds gusting to about 40 at times, some a little bit higher than that, up to about 60 through the Westman region, into Dauphin 40s through the Swan River region. We get a break from the wind as we head into Friday, but then it comes back with a vengeance in time for the weekend again. So high pressure clears us out for Friday. That stubborn area of low pressure stuck over Hudson Bay moves on, and we get a sunny sky and pretty calm conditions through most of tomorrow. Then things start to change again. This is thanks to an area of low pressure moving in from Saskatchewan. Cloud starts to build in as we get into Saturday. Then we see some showers, and even into parts of northern Manitoba, some wet snow potentially for places like Thompson and Norway House, really temperature dependent. And this rain really does quickly move off. So Saturday, not a total washout, but certainly we'll see some showers west to east as we get through parts of particularly the afternoon Saturday into the evening hours. Timing this out in terms of rainfall accumulation, really I'm thinking a general 10 to 15 millimeters most likely out of these showers for much of southern Manitoba. Could see some higher pockets, though, particularly through central Manitoba as that area of low pressure passes throughout the day on Saturday. So looking at your winds as we get through tomorrow, we do start to see them really dying off. So we're back to mainly calm conditions first thing in the morning, but then look what happens as we get into the afternoon. In the Red River Valley, those blues and purples start to pop up again. Seeing winds into Saturday, even gusting potentially even as high as 60 or 70 through parts of the Red River Valley. Those winds do stick around as we get into Sunday as well. 17s and 15s as we get through the weekend. Skies clearing through Sunday, a mainly sunny afternoon. And then, Brittany, we're back up above seasonal once again as we get into Monday and Tuesday of next week.
A little bit of a yo-yo. Thanks,
A little bit of a yo-yo, you're right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we will be right back after this short break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Stay with us. One Manitoba doctor says early detection and early intervention in the management of diabetes are key in trying to reduce the number of diabetic amputations. It comes after a report shows Manitoba saw more than double the national average of diabetes-associated leg amputations between 2020 and 2023. The CBC's Alana Cole spoke with some with first-hand experience.
For a time, walking was something Christian Swan could only dream about. The 46-year-old has diabetes. His ankle and foot were amputated more than 2 years ago after an infection.
I was dreaming I was walking. And if that sounds crazy, that's how it happened for me. I dreamt I was walking, and eventually I got to the stage where I started walking.
Swan learned to walk again with the help of a prosthetic leg. His amputation, likely one of the cases in a recent report. The Canadian Institute for Health Information found between 2020 and 2023, Manitoba saw more than double the national average of diabetes-associated leg amputations. It says Manitoba also saw more ankle and below amputations. Swan was on a trip when a foot wound developed. He visited hospital and was cleared to drive home. He doesn't know if it was the long drive back to Winnipeg or wait in hospital here that infection set in.
The toe started turning black, like it was crazy. It was just like you knew that something was going on, and then they broke the news to me.
You'll see that this toe is gone.
Dr. John Emble works with Winnipeg's Health Sciences Centre Limb Preservation Program. He says people with diabetes are at high risk for foot wounds and infections. He says the program sees upwards of 3,000 Manitoba patients a year. Almost all have diabetes.
And they're with us as long as it takes, and then we continue to follow people for life.
He says early detection and early intervention are key in trying to reduce the number of amputations.
If you can prevent end-stage complications, such as lack of sensation in the feet and suboptimal blood supply to the feet, you can prevent many of those complications and you can prevent the amputations.
The hospital had done their scans.
Darlene Tunney lost toes on her right foot. Now she's learning to live with an amputation below her left knee. Complications came after she went into hospital with pneumonia last November.
My left leg was my good leg. So it was a surprise to find that it had gone black and needed amputation, because I tried to check pretty daily my feet after losing my toe.
She says losing her independence and relying on others, like home care, is difficult. She cautions people to take diabetes seriously.
You can't play around with this disease. It will kill you.
She'd like to see more places like Uville Diabetes Center where people can see a nutritionist, a counselor, or nurse all under one roof. Swan says he didn't know enough.
People have reached out to me, asked questions, and then the next thing you know, they're in the hospital and they're getting treated for a similar situation.
Now he shares his story to help others. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A child has died from rabies after being exposed to an infected bat in northern Ontario. It's the first domestically acquired case of human rabies in the province since 1967. Health officials made the announcement today. They say the child woke up with a bat in the room. The parents didn't see any bites, scratches, or saliva, so they didn't seek a vaccine. The child, who was from Brantford, was in hospital last month, but no other details have been released. There have been only 26 cases of rabies in Canada since reporting started 100 years ago. Some of those were the result of exposure to a rabid animal outside the country. All of the cases were fatal. Officials say rabies is still circulating. The disease can cause severe damage to the brain and spinal cord. Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen are claiming responsibility for drone attacks on central Israel today. This comes as Israel intensifies its military operations against Hezbollah militants in Lebanon. Overnight, Israel launched airstrikes in the country for the first time in nearly 20 years. Many see the buildup as a preview of Israel's plans for action against its key enemy, the Iranian regime. CBC's Sasha Petrusik has the latest.
After this week's big barrage of missiles fired at Israel by Iran, the big question's been how will Israel respond and when? On that, the timing, U.S. President Joe Biden was asked the question today, and he answered, nothing will happen today. But since it's a holiday here in Israel, it's Jewish New Year, the government is closed, an answer isn't really expected here until probably tomorrow night. However, there is a general consensus that Israel is going to respond in a hard way, much harder perhaps than it did back in the spring when Iran fired missiles, cruise missiles, and drones at Israel in another attack, and Israel responded in a fairly light way under pressure from Washington not to escalate the situation. This time, that pressure still exists from Washington and from other countries. But here, the consensus is that that was too soft last time, and Israel needs to hit back hard. Among politicians, defense leaders, generals, and even the general public, people feel that Israel has to strike back in a way that will teach Iran a lesson. Or, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu puts it, this is a tough war and has to be tough against Iran's axis of evil. Now, that includes various militias in the region, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas down in Gaza, and others as well. But the main target, as far as Israel's concerned, is Iran, who is the funder and the backer of most of these other groups. This sort of conflict has been going on, at least verbally, for some time until it broke out in the open in the spring. Now, Israel says that it is time for it to strike back hard. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Jerusalem.
The three-day strike by port workers in Montreal is over, but the dispute behind it is no closer to resolution, and shipping is also being affected by other issues. The CBC's Scott Peterson reports.
This three-day strike was supposed to be a warning shot over the bow of the Maritime Employers Association in order to bring both sides together and sort of highlight the members' concerns here. But what this means as of this morning, that all 1,200 port workers are back on the job. They want a 20% pay hike over the next 4 years, and so far the Maritime Employers Association not budging. They're saying, quote, that the mediation process is failing to produce results. QB members have been without a contract since last year, and they were ordered back the last time there was a dispute here back in 2021 by the federal government, and union membership with CUPE say that there's still the same issues with wages and benefits still unresolved and are still currently on the table. Federal mediators are hoping to meet to bring both sides together on this, but so far, according to the Port Authority of Montreal, about 11,000 containers have piled up, not reaching their markets, and economists are predicting about $91 million worth of goods are not making it to where they belong each and every day. But nothing like what potentially we're seeing south of the border. Those 45,000 dock workers are still off the job. That's affecting 36 ports from the eastern side and the Gulf side as well. A lot of container goods come in from the U.S., and about 40% of all containers that enter the U.S. come from these ports. The White House is also involved here, being with the election in just a few weeks, and the White House urging both sides to come together because this is affecting about $4.5 billion worth of goods on a daily basis, and that could be inflationary not just here, but for all goods coming to Canada as well. Scott Peterson, CBC News, Toronto.
More now from Quebec, where the government there is coming under fire for funding 2 NHL games in Quebec City. The province has spent millions on this initiative, money that critics say would be better spent elsewhere. The CBC's Alison Northcott has that story.
The LA Kings started their Quebec City visit with a practice where fans could see the team take to the ice. Some there said it was great to have a chance to see these NHL players up close in their own city. The Kings are playing 2 preseason games at Quebec City's Videotron Center. It's part of the team's training camp, and the Quebec government has paid $5 to $7 million to have that happen here in Quebec. Even though hundreds of tickets have been sold for the games, the government has been facing criticism about this for months from opposition politicians, community groups, unions, and others who say this is not something to spend taxpayer money on. Quebec's Liberal leader said he had an LA Kings jersey made just for Premier François Legault. It highlights the province's deficit.
The captain deficit, the king of the deficit is François Legault. And here in the context that the Kings are here in Quebec, we will be sending to François Legault his jersey.
Quebec's premier defended his decision, saying it's a way to showcase Quebec City's arena in the hopes of one day bringing an NHL team back to the city. It hasn't had a team since the Nordiques left in 1995. In a press conference, LA Kings president Luc Robitaille didn't go into too much detail about the controversy over the taxpayer dollars, saying it's part of the business model for teams to play in different cities. He also said the Kings aren't here to cause tension, they're here to play hockey. The Kings captain said he's happy to have a chance to play in Quebec.
It's obviously great to be here. I know that the city's been waiting a long time to get some NHL action, and you know, with the passionate fans and everything that they have here.
Some community groups and unions held a protest. They say they aren't against the LA Kings themselves, but the money the province is handing over to them. They say given social problems like the housing crisis and homelessness, it's not appropriate for Quebec to be investing in an NHL team's visit. The Kings will play 2 games in Quebec City, one against the Boston Bruins tonight and on Saturday against the Florida Panthers. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Well, it's not just light pollution now that's making stars harder to see. Why satellites have astronomers and sky watchers raising concerns. We'll have more on that when we return after this short break. Stay with us. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. The sky watchers who look deep into space are having trouble seeing as far as they used to. Thousands of communication satellites are getting in the way. CBC's Nicole Martellaro has the story.
The stunning Milky Way at night, lost to most of humanity due to ground light pollution from streetlights, homes, and cars. But now astronomers are worried about another source of pollution, and it's coming from above. Satellites, mainly driven by SpaceX, which launches its Starlinks roughly twice a week.
If you're launching like 10 satellites, fine, great, no problem. But if you're doing that every week, you can't just consider those 10 satellites, as an isolated thing, right? It's part of this larger cumulative impact.
These satellites are designed to provide internet access around the world, particularly in remote locations, but they're interfering with astronomical research, both in the optical wavelength and in the radio wavelength, which allows astronomers to see what our eyes can't. SpaceX has more than half of all active satellites in orbit, 6,000, and are planning for a total of 42,000.
If this satellite proliferation continues, then it is a huge problem for science. It's a huge problem for being able to observe the universe, to being able to understand what's out there.
SpaceX acknowledges the issue and is working with astronomers to make the satellites dimmer and quieter. Yet, the problems persist. A new study found that second-generation Starlinks are leaking electromagnetic radiation, which creates noise for radio astronomers.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
Further complicating things, SpaceX isn't the only one launching these mega constellations of satellites. China is proposing 40,000 of its own.
I think that we're just on an unsustainable path right now. I think that there's not international coordination is not a priority on anyone's radar right now, and it's more of like a kind of a Wild West space race situation.
Runaway progress at the cost of what we see in the night sky and what we don't. Nicole Martellaro, CBC News, Toronto.
Riley Lachuk is back, and Riley, I was out at Lake of the Woods this past weekend and just sitting there in the evenings looking up at the bright stars, and they were just incredible.
There's something incredible to watch for tonight, too, if you stay up late.
I don't. I'm going to miss it. I know it. Every time.
The Northern Lights likely making an appearance tonight, and we will have clear skies tonight to see the Northern Lights. Have a look at this. I want to show you where you can see them, because really much of Western Canada, you'll have a good shot at seeing the Northern Lights over the next couple of nights. Most likely Friday night into Saturday, we won't have that good of a view of it in Winnipeg, but certainly tonight a good night for that. The KP, the planetary K index, this is the measure, the scale, if you will, that we measure and how intense some of these solar storms and solar flares are. That index at a 6, which is on the high end of that through the next couple of nights, which means that you will have a good shot of seeing the Northern Lights across Western Canada, for sure in Manitoba, between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. If you get outside of the city and find somewhere where there is not a lot of light pollution, say from street lights or anything like that. So there's some cool, something to look at in the sky tonight. Here is Rue, courtesy of Carl. Thanks for taking this picture and talk back at cbc.ca. We're looking at a 3-degree temperature first thing in the morning tomorrow, up to 17 tomorrow. The winds light through the afternoon hours, and then they start to pick up once again, and that's when we're looking at those windy conditions as we head into the weekend. Temperatures dropping below 0 overnight tonight, -2s for Brandon and Verdun, even through the Riding Mountain region. I think we've got a shot even at -4 overnight tonight. Swan River down to -3, Peguis -2 overnight tonight. A little bit of cloud cover will keep those temperatures closer to 0 for much of northern Manitoba, 0 for Grand Rapids at Gillam. Could see a couple more flurries in Shamattawa at -1 tomorrow. And then we clear really nicely as we get through Friday. High pressure sets in, our winds do start to diminish a little bit, so we're looking at temperatures through the afternoon hours tomorrow at 9 in Flin Flon, 11 in the Pas and Grand Rapids. Sunshine across the south tomorrow. It's not till we get to the later afternoon, even into the evening, that we start to see our winds picking up again. 18s for Verdun and Brandon, 17 in Winnipeg, and into the teens as well, Brittany, for northwestern Ontario. I've got a treat of a weather photo to show you a bit later on.
Well, you know what? I'm going to miss the Northern Lights. I know it. So if our viewers get amazing photos, please send them in so I can see them. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, the typhoon that brought severe weather to Taiwan yesterday made landfall today. Winds hit 160 kilometers an hour. Rain was torrential. Trees and streetlights toppled. Heavy debris was sent flying, and in several areas, landslides struck. Flights were grounded, and financial markets were closed for a second day. 2 deaths were reported yesterday, and dozens more were injured. Several people have been reported missing. Winnipegger Jeremy Workington is a huge fan of the Zelda video game franchise. So much so that they're playing the game non-stop with a little help from friends. It's all being streamed online for a fundraising event called Zelda Fest through Saturday. The goal? To raise $10,000 for Rainbow Resource Centre. Jeremy spoke with the CBC's Faith Fundal yesterday.
What does it feel like? What are you feeling right now as this marathon continues?
A little sleep deprived, if I'm to be honest with you,
can imagine.
But super excited. It's been such a fun time to see my friends and also my wife play their very first Zelda games. I'm the one who actually has been the fan of Zelda, and it's like something that I've always wanted to do is share like that passion of mine with my wife, friends, and everything, and to see them play their first Zelda games. It's so exciting.
What have you noticed from them when they play, especially for the folks who played it for the first time?
Yeah, so like I think what the big thing is that they didn't realize how puzzly it is and how much they would have to actually work their brain. And then it's just like they get used to the controls, they get used to everything, and then they're like, oh, this is wonderful. And let alone like they get to start their first Zelda story, the ones that have impacted my life, and see what their reactions to those stories are. And it's wonderful to see.
Why are you raising money for Rainbow Resource Centre?
Because it is definitely a cause that's close to my heart. As someone who grew up in poverty and never had the resources available to me, or was told about the resources of who I am, and being told I was a black sheep, or that I was not really like, sorry to get emotional, but like worth anything. And
you found a place that was validating, but also helped you find other folks around.
Exactly, yeah. So like last night we did Zelda trivia night, and it was so much fun, and to like involve the 2S LGBTQIA plus community in that was so much fun. We had a blast.
How do people donate? Because they watch the stream, but that's one thing. How are you encouraging folks to donate?
Yeah, so we actually have a link on our website at the top for donate. If you go into the stream on Twitch, we also have below the video to go to Tiltify as well to donate directly to the Rainbow Resource Centre. We actually don't touch any of the proceeds. It goes directly to them.
And there are actually things that people can do to be able to donate certain amounts. Talk more about like one of them that shows $10 to spin the wheel for a reward or punishment. What's that?
So it's our Wheel of Fun, as we've it's
a good name.
Called it, because you can donate $10. We will spin the wheel, and whatever it lands on, we will do on stream for you. It's a way to bring a lot of fun to the couch cam and like create a bunch of laughs and good memories.
I mean, video games, you already talked about Rainbow Resource Centre helping build community. But when you think about playing this game, how has that helped you build community?
So I had a hard time making friends growing up, and also I had to raise myself. My mom did an amazing job raising my brother and I growing up as a single mother, and she was working hard, so she wasn't always there. But I turned to video games, and the one series that really helped me was The Legend of Zelda. The stories that taught me how to be that friend, how to be the shoulder for people to like talk to me and be open, be there for people when they needed it. Always that ear. So it's just like the stories, the themes of the Legend of Zelda games. It's more than just a video game to me. It really has taught me how to be the person I am today, to be compassionate, to have that empathy for people, because that's what we need. We need people to really have open hearts and love everybody. And that's a huge thing for me, is no matter who you are, if you are searching for community, if you are feeling lonely, or if you're feeling like that it's something that you need in your life, because we're humans, we thrive on community. And I didn't have that.
On the surface, I mean, it is quote unquote just a game, but it actually is more than just a game for you.
It really is, because having the stories, I know it's going to sound weird, but like the relationships with the characters and seeing Link, find the courage to actually go out of the comfort zone and fight for friends, find Zelda.
Still ahead, Riley Lachak is back with a last check on our forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Stay with us.
This place. Every corner of Manitoba has its own story. Every community has a tale to tell.
And CBC is here to share them.
Everywhere you are.
In every way we can.
Watching, listening, reading, streaming,
sharing. CBC, telling Manitoba's story,
wherever you are.
Scenes from Easter Island yesterday as people gathered to take in the Ring of Fire solar eclipse. It's also known as an annular eclipse. It happens when the moon is too far away from Earth to completely cover the sun, like it did for the total solar eclipse we saw in central and eastern Canada earlier this year. This annular eclipse was visible across the southern half of South America, as well as parts of Antarctica and Hawaii.
And even the dogs had their eye protection. I love that. 17 degrees tomorrow in Winnipeg. Watch that risk of frost overnight tonight into this morning. If you have outdoor plants, particularly in western Manitoba, you might want to think about either covering those up in your garden, or if you can bring them inside, that's a good idea too. 17 with some showers moving through as we get through Saturday. Windy through the weekend, clearing on Sunday. Then we're entering a bit more of a dry stretch with temperatures staying above seasonal for this time of the year. Okay, weather photo for you. This one was taken from above by James, who took this picture near Carmen. You can always keep sending your weather photos to me at talkback@cbc.ca.
And the Northern Lights.
And the Northern Lights. I'd love to see your Northern Lights photos, for sure. Well, if you spend a lot of time on social media, you may recognize the feature of our next story.
Here's tonight's Daily Lift. Mudang, the pygmy hippo, has gained millions of social media fans since she was revealed to the world in a Thailand zoo in July. Mudang is so popular in Thailand that many businesses are racing to cash in on the craze. There are cakes shaped like Mudang too, like this one from a cafe in Bangkok that prompted a surge of orders.
There are many artists selling Mudang merchandise as well, and the baby hippo's image is even being used to sell makeup as well. Mudang mania apparently isn't showing any signs of slowing down. That's blush. That's blush.
I love it. The cake looks too good, too cute to eat. We enjoyed spending our evening with you. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.
Yeah.